So with regards to SMEs, micro tax status, turnover tax, there's various classifications of businesses in South Africa and very much internationally. But if we were to look at the let's as just off the top of my head, the Davis Commission report on micro tax status and business sizes. Typically, a micro business firstly has turnover tax, which is very much simplified system, and this makes it easier for that business to meet their tax obligations, replacing income tax, VAT, provisional tax, CGT to an extent, as well as limiting dividends tax. Typically, a micro business would sit at a sub minimum of approximately 200,000 per annum as their annual turnover. And that's very much based on the findings of the Davis Commission back in 2014. And they would cap at not more than 1 million per annum. And this then qualifies them for micro status, firstly, and submitting to turnover tax, which again, it's, personally, it's not terrible. I mean, if we could do turnover tax as individuals, I think we'd all be a lot happier. The threshold is minimal. I mean, where you're sitting at about 500,000 per annum, you're paying 1,650 plus 2% of the amount above 500,000 per annum, which is quite favorable and very much does speak to development in South Africa as a whole, as is required to actually stabilize our economy, more so now than ever, off the back of the hard lockdowns, the forced shutdowns, the looting, and things of that nature. But aside from the turnover for a micro business, what's also considered is firstly the number of salaried employees. This should be not more than 5 salaried employees. That being said, we also must then look at the assets and the record keeping to maintain micro status. In terms of micro status, the entity should have approximately 100,000 as a gross asset value. And from the perspective of their assets and liabilities register, in terms of record keeping, each asset or liability exceeding 10,000 rands must be noted. Now, in terms of this, right, the taxable turnover, you're typically looking at the sliding scale, approximately 0 to 7%, very much dependent, and that sliding scale can actually be found on the South African Revenue Services website. In terms of the qualifying criteria, however, it must be noted that a micro business does not necessarily have to be a little board of directors. It can also very much be a natural person functioning as a sole prop, a typical company, or historically a CC. All right, as long as the annual turnover does not exceed 1 million. However, it is important to note that if the taxpayer is a natural person or operating as a sole prop, they may not have shares or members' interest in any company or CC other than that of a listed company, unit trust, or an STS, which is Sectional Title Schemes Body Corporate. All right. So that being said, there are certain implications that must be borne in mind, and this more speaks to the registration and deregistration, which cannot be reversed for a 3-year period subsequent to the registration or deregistration taking place. However, in the case of registration, should the business which qualifies for micro tax status cease to qualify in that, let's say, their annual turnover exceeds 1 million, or there's a massive expansion in the market and their salaried employees goes up to 20. In that instance, they must notify SARS within 21 business days of their change in status. It is also at that stage that should their annual turnover exceed 1 million, they will be required to register for VAT, as is not a requirement under the micro business status.